Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we explore convenient yet effective shortcuts that will help you get ahead and move forward faster by becoming a better leader. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert, and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rimbach.
Need a powerful and entertaining way to ignite your next conference, retreat, or team building session? My keynotes don't include magic, but they do have the power to help your attendees take a leap forward by putting emotional intelligence into their employee engagement, and customer-centric leadership practices. So bring the infotainment creativity of the Fast Leader Show to your next event, and I'll help your attendees get over the hump now. Go to beyondmorale.com/speaking to learn more. Okay, Fast Leader Legion, today I'm excited because I have somebody on the show today that I think is going to give us a global perspective on high-performing organizations. Brian MacNeice was born and raised in Dublin, Ireland. As a proud Irishman, he enjoyed a great childhood being part of a large extended family. He loved nothing more than a big family get-together. Growing up, Brian could always be found on the field, but he realized that he was never going to be a professional sportsman, so he started studying how teams became high-performing. Although Brian still does carry a passion for sport, he is involved in professional sport in both rugby union and cricket. He is a semi-professional rugby referee and officiate in European and international competitions. Also, he recently stepped down after 8 years as a national team selector for the Irish cricket team. But Brian's primary degree is in computer science, a fact that amuses his 3 kids when they see him struggle with modern technologies that they are totally comfortable with. His professional career has seen him work in a wide variety of industry sectors as an advisor to senior management teams. Brian is an expert in organizational performance and high-performing teams. He advises leading Irish and international clients on driving improvements in the performance focus and culture of their business. Brian is also the author of the book Powerhouse, Insider Accounts into the World's Top Performance Organizations. Brian still lives in Dublin with his wife Miriam and their 3 children, all boys, Charlie 16, Jack 15, and Dan 9. Brian MacNeice, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
Jim, I'm going to do my very best, and good afternoon to all your podcast listeners.
I appreciate that, Brian. Now, I've given our listeners a little bit about you, but can you tell us what your current passion is so that we can get to know you even better?
My current passion is all about high performance, particularly high performance in a group context, whether it's to do with teams or organization. I'm absolutely fascinated about what drives performance in a group context. How do you go about understanding kind of what the key dynamics of high performance are, and how do you go about helping leaders cultivate high performing teams in their organizations, whether they're in sport, in business, wherever that you might find them.
Well, now in the book you talk about 12 different principles that actually guide these high performance organizations, and I don't want to get into all 12 because that's why people need to really get the book, because having these case studies and going into depth in all these is really important to understand. But if you were to look at these 12, right? 12 guiding or 12 principles. I mean, you can't say that all of them have equal weight, even though they're interrelated and they're important. But can you say that there's one, maybe even 2 that kind of stands out as you got? I mean, these without a doubt you have to be absolutely expert at. What would they be?
Yeah, so I would group them into kind of 3 different categories. So I think, we've identified 12 characteristics that we found are common across all the case studies that we looked at. And I think it's important to understand that the case studies that we looked at, we deliberately spread the net very wide. We went to the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh. We went to Finland to study the state school education system. We went to the Kirov Ballet in Russia to look at that. We went to Southwest Airlines in Texas to have a look at what they did, the U.S. Marines, Doctors Without Borders. So, it was very diverse, both in terms of geography and also in terms of what people did. And what was really interesting to us was those 12 characteristics that we've identified in the book, they repeated themselves time and time again, albeit in very different ways in each of the institutions that we looked at. But the same patterns were emerging over and over again. So I would say it's pretty hard to pick any of the 12 and drop them in terms of importance. But I would almost categorize them into 3 different things. I think there are characteristics that go about defining a really clear sense of purpose for an organization or a team. So without a clear sense of purpose, it's really hard to get people aligned and focused about where you want to go. The second thing is you need to have really effective processes in place to manage the day-to-day and enough performance pressure to make people perform at their best or close to their best. So I think you've got to have those dynamics in play. And there's about 4 or 5 different characteristics that talk to that we've identified. And then the final thing is about people stuff. You've got to have the right behaviors, the right level of engagement, the right level of feedback across your people to really kind of sustain performance over the long term. So I would say break it down into those 3 categories. Real strong sense of purpose, really efficient processes that help drive performance and performance pressure, and then people principles that are really effective in helping sustain performance in the long term.
Okay, so for me, thanks for sharing that. You know, what you just described, I'm kind of looking at within the book, and that's called the Powerhouse Performance Model. But there was one thing that you're missing. You want to add that?
Well, you tell me what I'm missing, and then I'll talk to your listeners about that.
Well, that's the planning piece.
Yeah, sure. So I think that comes into the purpose. So for me, the planning piece is part of setting a real clear sense of purpose for the organization. We've a fundamental belief that ambition is one of the key drivers, if you like, of the starting point of high performance. So we deliberately started the book with the story of the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, which is the only corporate entity to ever have won the Nobel Peace Prize. And the reason that it did is because its founder, a guy called Professor Muhammad Yunus, an economics professor based in Bangladesh, wanted to try and figure out how can I eradicate poverty in my country, in a country that's stricken with poverty. And so he came up with the whole idea of micro-lending, lending very small amounts of money to people below the poverty line. And he had an ambition to create a museum of poverty. In other words, poverty would be a thing of the past. And it was by using that sense of ambition, it led to a whole pile of innovative ways of approaching and tackling the issue of credit to people below the poverty line, people with no assets to underwrite the credit, and has transformed the lives of so many people in Bangladesh, which is why Professor Yunus and the organization has won the Nobel Prize. So part of the planning piece is, first of all, clear sense of ambition. What are we trying to do? And something that provides direction and stretch and purpose and inspiration to the population of people. But then have a real clear understanding as to how we're going to get there. What are the most important things that we've got to do right now to help us get on the way? And that's where the planning piece comes in. Okay. And you need both.
Well, that was very helpful, because obviously then what I missed in the interpretation of what you were talking about is that it was actually the priorities that was missing.
Yeah, so that's the next piece of the equation. So it's all fine and well, as far as purpose is concerned, it's all fine and well in having ambition and aiming for the stars, as it were, because that helps drive innovation and lots of other stuff that comes out of that. The next thing is you have to have real clear focus. So you need to be really clearly focused on what matters most in terms of our success as a business or a team. What are the 2 or 3 things that matter more than anything else? And how do we become brilliant at those 2 or 3 things? How do we make sure everybody else is aligned around those? And how do we set a clear set of priorities right now, today, for the next short period of time that will help us move the bar in performance on those 2 or 3 things that matter? And that's something that's going to be changing all the time. What's not changing is you need to make sure that all your people are completely aligned at any point in time to what's going to help deliver performance and capability improvement across the organization or the team. And that's where the priority piece comes in. And very often we find that organizations lose that sense of priority. They have people just misaligned because they're not clear on what the key priorities right now are that are going to help us drive towards that kind of ambitious target of where we're trying to head to in the medium term.
Well, to me, it seems like this really, and even the way that you put this Powerhouse performance model together, you have the plan essentially as the roof. If you think about it as a house, you can visualize this. And your priorities, come underneath that. And then your people and process are kind of the foundational components. At least that's the way that I'm seeing it and interpreting it. So when you start thinking about, this as a house model, and through each particular case study, you populated this Powerhouse model with each of the details and insight that you found within those. And one of the things I want to focus on is you talked about innovation. If you start thinking about a particular Powerhouse performance model and getting to be very good on execution, do you run the risk of hurting your ability to innovate?
Yeah, so this is the really critical point that we're making. So you're right. We've deliberately put the Powerhouse model together almost as a house, right? 4 different component parts to it: the plan piece, the priorities piece, the people piece, and the process piece. And you've correctly identified. The people and process stuff are kind of foundation principles that are enablers. The plan and priorities are the kind of top end of the house, if you like. But the really important insight that we've learned from the case studies and also from the work that we do with our clients is that you've got to work in and across those 4 pillars at the same time. It's not enough to say, okay, I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to focus on our plan for now. Let's get our plan nailed, and then we'll address all the other stuff later. You've got to work across all 4 at the same time. And part of the reason that that's important is exactly the point that you've just made. If you overly focus on one to the detriment of the others, then you could be missing a trick. In the case that you highlighted, you could be stifling innovation because your focus is on something else, and you're not enabling people to be innovative in terms of solving problems about how do we get better today at what we really need to be better at in order to continue to be high performing. So it's important that you're working across the 4 pillars of the Powerhouse model at the same time, and that becomes an organizational capability. So, part of what we would do with the leadership teams that we work with is we really get them to understand how do we get better at juggling these 4 pillars in order to really drive for better performance, sustained long-term performance within our environment.
Okay, that's very interesting, because for me, when you start thinking about the whole, let's think about the way that we work as individuals, and that there's no way we can focus on 4 things at one time. It's just, it's impossible. We say we can do it, but it's just not the way we work. We're not wired that way.
Yeah.
So when you think about an organization, all they are is a collective of people. So if I have to juggle all 4 things, how are these organizations doing that?
So I think, first of all, if you think about it in this context, right? First of all, you've got a clear sense of direction as to where we're trying to go. So that's something that's not going to change week by week or quarter by quarter. You're setting an ambition target, if you like, for the organization that, as I said before, provides direction, stretch, purpose, and inspiration. So that's the kind of the true north, if you like, as to where we're heading to. What does change over time, though, is the context within which we're operating changes all the time. So whilst we're not changing what true north looks like, we are reacting to and interpreting our own individual performance and the performance of those around us, our competitors, the market, and we're flexing all the time to make sure that our current response to how we continue to aim towards the target that we're aiming for is adequate and fit for purpose. And so the role of the leaders are to make it clear, where are we heading? What's the plan to get there? What does that mean you've got to be focused on right now? And how do we ensure that the behaviors and the ways of working and the processes are efficient to help us enable you to do that job really well? And it's the ones that really get that and have that working as a kind of well-oiled engine. They're the high-performing, they're the enduring high-performing organizations that we've studied and that we work with as well.
So I can only imagine going and traveling the world and learning about these organizations, as well as, your exposure to sport, that, you probably, could sit here and just talk to us all day about inspiring things. One of the things that we use on the show are quotes, and we love to share them, and because they can do a lot of that, inspiring and true north pointing, as you had mentioned. Is there a quote or 2 that you can share that helps you?
I'll give you 2 off the top of my head that I really kind of like and that we came across in the research for the book. So one we came across in a couple of different contexts. When I was with the St. Louis Cardinals and when I was with the Mayo Clinic, in both organizations, executives said to me, the name on the front of the jersey is more important than the name on the back of the jersey. And what they were really saying to me was, we work collectively as a unit to deliver high performance. We don't have any individual stars. In fact, if anybody is working here in this environment who thinks that they are more important than the organization itself, then we've got a cultural misfit. And it was amazing when I reflected on that and I looked at all the examples. both of the ones that we studied for the book and others that I lean on, I thought, you know what, that is the same in all the high performing examples that I look at. It's not to say you don't have great people, great individual people there. You do, but they work as part of a collective unit to try and deliver something. So for me, that's one great quote. Name on the front of the jersey, more important than the name on the back. Second one I'll give you, we got when we went to visit the US Marines in Paris Island. Today's heroism translates to become tomorrow's expectations. So in other words, what is standout performance right now is going to in the future become the kind of baseline for performance, and we've always got to improve. We can never get complacent. In fact, the organization that gets complacent, that thinks we've cracked it, that thinks we've got it, is the one that's going to get passed out before they even know it's happened. And so that's the second one that I really like, you know, that notion that we're always trying to improve. We can always be better.
I love them both, and thanks for sharing. And that second one for me stands out a lot of ways. And even in being a parent is, you're trying to share with your kids and try to teach them the whole resiliency as well as how do you actually achieve. And complacency is for the loser. Is essentially the way I interpret what you said.
Yeah. So the biggest danger you have, and one of the criteria we applied to the organizations that we studied was they have to be high performing for a long period of time, generation after generation. And the reason for that is because we get that enduring high performance is defined by being at the top end of your kind of peer group, if you like, for decades, not for a point in time. And there's lots of examples of organizations that have been kind of there for a point in time, and then suddenly something has happened. Primarily, what generally happens is they get complacent. They assume that the success that they're enjoying right now is going to continue, and that some of the fundamentals that they had to get them successful in the first instance, they dispense with and ignore, and they get complacent. So yeah, that's a really important principle. And you're spot on about, I have this conversation with my kids all the time. I've got teenage kids now, and it's really, really hard to get them to understand this notion of hard work. Fundamentally, it's all about hard work.
It is. And it is a learned behavior. But it's funny though. I think we're born with it because we need it in order to survive, but then we have our parents take over, right? If we're fortunate enough. And then we kind of lose it, but we have to regain it in order for us to succeed as adults.
Yeah, exactly. And organizational culture is exactly the same. You've got to work hard at making sure that you're driving for continued success. And when you enjoy success, you've got to recommit to that and say, okay, what do we now need to do in order to stay where we are?
Well, I'm sure on the flip side of the spectrum, going through and studying and analyzing, and even, having clients that are wanting to, achieve, we see the downside of ones that fail, that don't actually have the 12 principles, can't actually have a well-oiled machine and build their powerhouse. And it happens for us as individuals too. And on the show, we talk about getting over the hump, where we didn't have some of the things in place, and we learned lessons, and, hopefully we learned to take a better path as a result. But is there a story that you can share when you had to get over the hump?
Oh God, I would say there's probably kind of several. I suppose one of the humps I had to get over, I started out my career working in large consultancy practices and advisory businesses. And so I worked in a big four kind of environment. And I got to a point where, I was looking at the impact of the work that I was doing. We were getting hired to do lots of work for organizations that wanted the name of the organization attached to the piece of work, and not necessarily that interested in actually implementing what was being kind of recommended, or, I just got really frustrated with that. And I had I suppose what you might call an epiphany moment, where I kind of said, you know what, is this my future? Is this what I really want to do? Or do I want to go and start working for organizations that are really committed to trying to be the best they can be, and are genuinely bought into the notion of, if they want me to come and advise them and help them, that we can work in partnership to help deliver that. And so that the work I was doing was having a real impact, as opposed to a report that might sit on a shelf that has a nice name on it and everybody gets really comfortable because of that, but actually doesn't really lead to action or change. So I suppose that was probably kind of the biggest epiphany moment that I had. And it was why, together with my kind of business partner, James Bowen, and co-author James Bowen, why we kind of set up the business that we did, because we just really wanted to make a difference with the client work that we did. And I was worried that wasn't going to be the case if I stayed where I was.
Well, take us to a time where you actually remember specifics around when that kind of hit you.
Yeah, so I was working on a project for a kind of semi-state organization here based in Ireland, and they were looking for a report on a strategic issue. But we almost got instructed before the thing started that, look, there's a right answer here. And so we need to make sure that this report kind of comes up with this right answer, and it's going to back up an argument that we're trying to kind of position. And I remember thinking at the time, well, if you already know the answer, why the hell are you paying us to write a report to give you the answer? And why don't you just get on with it and lead yourself and kind of save the hassle and time and money associated with this, and the security of having, a respected Big Four consultancy practice put their name to a report that comes up with the same recommendation that you already have concluded. So it kind of just got me questioning, well, hang on, there's got to be more to this advisory work that I'm doing than this. So that was probably one of the biggest kind of aha moments, if you want to call it that, for me personally on a professional basis.
When we start thinking about fulfillment, when we start thinking about growth, when we start thinking about well-being, knowing that we've made a difference is a critical component to that. And you weren't.
Yeah, well, so I was worried that my future life was going to be writing a whole bunch of stuff that wasn't going to actually make any difference at all. So I committed in that moment to say, okay, forget this. Let's go and work with people where I can genuinely make a difference. And I had in James, my business partner, I had somebody who was very like-minded in that respect. And so we set up our practice on that basis. And thankfully, 8 years later, we've stuck to that principle. And I think if you talk to any of the clients that we work with, they'll say part of the reason that they hire us is because they get that we're committed to their success, and that the input that we have has an impact in terms of their business performance. And so I can't ask for any more than that. I feel completely satisfied that we're kind of living that, and there's a real sense of purpose and meaning to the work that we're doing.
Yeah, definitely finding those clients that want that no complacency rule, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have the benefit of almost kind of screening our clients in the same way that they might screen us before they hire us. So we want to work with clients that are absolutely committed to delivering better performance, and who buy into that. And once we get that, it's a great experience, and we have some great client relationships as a consequence of that.
Well, without a doubt, promoting the book with your consulting work, 3 teenage boys, all the work that you're doing, in sport, trying to, further, the activities and the performance in those areas. You got a lot of things going on. And we didn't even talk about your wife. I'm sure you spend time with her too, I hope.
Yeah.
What are some of your goals?
So I suppose you're right. Absolutely. There's an awful lot of different things going on. And fundamentally, you started your introduction to me based on some family stuff. And for me, family is number one. So Miriam, my wife, and the 3 boys are my absolute priority. And so everything I do is to try and make sure that they have the kind of right guidance, if you like, in terms of bringing up the boys, and that we've got a good, healthy, respectful family life. But then thereafter, I fill it up with all the other stuff. And, I think part of what I want kind of Miriam and the boys to be proud of me for is that, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I've achieved over the course of my career in life, not just in business, but outside of business as well. And that passes off onto them as well. And that they use that as inspiration for what they might achieve in their lives too.
And the Fast Leader Legion wishes you the very best. Now, before we move on, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. The number one thing that contributes to customer loyalty is emotions. So move onward and upward faster by gaining significantly deeper insight and understanding of your customer journey and personas with emotional intelligence. With your empathy mapping workshop, you'll learn how to evoke and influence the right customer emotions that generate improved customer loyalty and reduce your cost to operate. Get over your emotional hump now by going to empathymapping.com to learn more. All right, here we go, Fast Leader listeners. It's time for the Hump Day Hoedown. Okay, Brian, the Hump Day Hoedown is a part of our show where you give us good insights fast. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and your job is to give us robust yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Brian MacNeice, are you ready to hoedown?
I'm up for it. Yeah, let's go.
All right. So what do you think is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
Oh, okay. So I would say nothing. And I would say that to all of the leaders that are listening to this podcast, there is absolutely nothing that is holding you back from being a better leader today. There is no reason that you can't commit to being a better leader. So just commit to it and get on with it. That would be my message. What is the best leadership advice you have ever received? I would say be really authentic. Value everyone that is involved in your organization. Get to know them, have real conversations with them, really engage with them. I describe engagement as a contact sport. So get out of your office, get up tight, close, and personal with as many people in your organization as possible, and provide real, authentic leadership. What is one of your secrets that you believe contributes to your success? I would say ambition. Having the drive, if you like, to try and achieve something, and then thinking about how the hell am I going to achieve that. So starting out with something that I think for example, writing this book. When we decided to write this book, we were like, we've never written a book before. Is this something we can do? Look, let's commit to it, and we'll figure out how we go about doing it. And so I would say ambition. What do you feel is one of your best tools that helps you lead in business or life? Stubbornness, not taking no for an answer. So just keep going. If you hit a roadblock, keep going. Try and get around it. Get over it. Get past it. Whatever it takes. And what would be one book that you'd recommend to our listeners? It could be from any genre. And of course, we're going to put a link to Powerhouse on the show notes page as well. Yeah, okay. So after Powerhouse, the second book that I would recommend, let me think. Okay, I would go for a book called The Goldmine Effect by a guy called Rasmus Ankerson. It's kind of in a very similar genre to ours. A lot of his thinking aligns to our thinking. And that's a book that I really liked. Okay, Fast Leader listeners, you can find links to that and other bonus information from today's show by going to fastleader.net/Brian MacNeice. Okay, Brian, this is my last Hump Day Hoedown question. Imagine you were given the opportunity to go back to the age of 25, and you've been given the opportunity to take the knowledge and skills that you have now back with you, but you can't take everything back. You can only choose one. So what skill or piece of knowledge would you take back with you, and why? Okay, so this goes back to something that we talked about earlier. I would say just absolutely commit to an ethic of hard work. Nothing replaces it. And the most successful people that I've ever come across, they all share a hard work gene. So commit to hard work ethic. That will be it. Brian, it was an honor to spend time with you today. Can you please share with the Fast Leader Legion how they can connect with you? Yeah, Jim, absolutely. So first of all, thanks very much for having us on. Secondly, yeah, you can find us. So the details on the book you'll find at theperformancepowerhouse.com, or you can find details about our consulting practice at katinospartners.com. Or if you look up on Twitter or LinkedIn for Brian MacNeice, Katinos Partners, James Bowen, you'll find us. So just reach out to us, and the more people that reach out to us, the better. We're always fascinated to hear about stories about high performance and people who are interested in sharing our focus and our passion for high performance. Brian MacNeice, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. The Fast Leader Legion honors you and thanks you for helping us get over the hump. Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you
move onward and upward faster.